Today on the show, talking about creative strategy, and we're doing it AMA style. I've done one other AMA before, one of my more popular episodes ever, and so I thought we'd revisit the format by taking your questions about how to generate ads that sell products. Aside from media buying or any of those kinds of things that I often spend time thinking about, what about at the actual level of creative, what moves the needle for your meta ads? How do you actually sell product for your brands? This is an area I love to think and talk about and work through, and so I've got your questions. Got them in a Twitter thread, and so I'm going to go through the answers today. Let's get into it. All right. I'm going to start with a question. I'll link the thread in the show notes here, by the way, but you'll see most of these questions. I'm going to get to as many of them as I can. And so there's not a lot more interaction there. So I'm going to start with a question that I think is a really, really good place to start this conversation, which is from Andrew. I'm going to say his name wrong. Clough, C-L-O-U-G-H. Sorry, Andrew, if I got your last name wrong. Got your first name right, anyway. Could you walk through the start of basic creatives for brands that have not developed that muscle? 0 to 1. And he kind of goes on to ask some questions about SaaS and whatever else you would use tools-wise to help this. But I actually don't want to go towards tools. This is a great place to start the conversation because I think I can ground a lot of what I think about meta ads creative by starting here. And really, this is beyond meta ads creative. This is for almost all communication for your brand and certainly for all advertising for your brand. How would you start to work through great creative? And my answer to that question is to use one principle above everything else to guide everything else I'm going to say, and that is the principle of clarity. Be as clear as possible about the benefit that your product provides to the customer. In fact, even before you get to the benefit, be as clear as possible about what your product is. So much bad creative on meta ads is bad, and so much bad communication in general. Like I think about this all the time in church. Okay, so I go to church, and I think most of the bad sermons I've ever sat through, if you've ever sat through, this could be for anything, right? TED Talks tend to sort of sort this out in advance, right? But like, if you go to a conference and you hear somebody give a talk, like almost every time you hear somebody give a poor talk, it's because they're not clear. It's not actually because you think they're wrong most times. They didn't illustrate it in enough clever ways, or they didn't entertain you enough. Almost always, the problem is that the number one issue with communication is clarity. And so I think above everything else, the place to start with your creative strategy is to be very, very clear. And what I mean, here's how I would do that if I was Andrew in this case, right? I would look at my brand and my product, and I would think, okay, what is it that I am selling? And I would get like stupid about that in some ways or another. And I would just try to figure out what is the simplest way to communicate that I possibly can. And this may not be your greatest ad of all time. That is this straightforward, okay? But I bet you it will get you off the ground. And that's what you asked about, 0 to 1, okay? This is why I think certain ad formats work really, really well consistently. It's not actually because of the format per se. It's because there's certain ad formats that force you to try to be as clear as possible, and including about what the product is, what the offer is, and what the benefit is to the customer. So, like the Post-it note ad, right? Like that kind of approach doesn't have to be a Post-it note, but we call them text and context ads at AJF Growth, just like, sort of any ad where you write something in the context of the image instead of overlaying text on the image. One of the reasons I think that format works, part of it, I think it sort of doesn't stick out as an ad in the feed, okay? But secondly, I think it works because there's sort of an economy of language that you have to use there. And the less words you can use, the more work each word has to do for you, and the more clear you have to be. And so it works really, really well. And some of my favorite versions of this ad is essentially saying like, this is X product. Like, I mean, it'll be a little bit more information than that, or a little bit off of that, but really, really close to saying something like that, right? And so if you literally, Post-it actually is a good exercise for this, aside from whether you ever run it as an ad or not, and I think it works fine, so go for it. What you can do is on a Post-it note for your Post-it note image ad, just force yourself, and because a Post-it note is small, to write 5 to 7 words about what makes your product great. Take a photo of it and put it in your ad account and see what happens. Obviously, running manual bids. If you go look at all of my old content, you'll see how I think you should run this. But that's the basic idea. I think that'll work well. Another format like this I like is what we call the socially native still. This is sort of any image that has text overlaid with any font treatment or visual treatment that is sort of like standard to the way people edit their stuff on Instagram and Facebook. Okay. So it doesn't have to be any one specific style, but anything that looks like it was probably could have been edited in the sort of Instagram image editor, that kind of idea. So you can use that style for the same thing. Just simple language right away and start testing angles and headlines really, really quickly. Make 5 to 7 of them super fast and just be as clear as possible. Okay. It's also why I like the long form explainer ad. I've talked about the long form explainer ad on this podcast a bunch. I will try to grab those links in the show notes. But basic idea again is be as clear as possible. In this case with more text, but now what you're really doing is just trying to take your product and tell people as much as you possibly can about that product. And so start my favorite hook on these longer video ads is, this is X product from Y brand. Like, just start there. And yeah, it's not the most creative thing in the world. I get that, but it works. And it works because it starts off hitting people clearly. One thing that's underrated about meta ads is that you do more demand capture than you realize. People don't know about your brand, but if they're in market for your category, assuming your category exists, simply stating what the product is can work really well because Meta will find other people who are in market for your category. And so just by standing out or just by saying, here's what the product is and here's what the brand is, and if you're showing a visual of that at the same time, people will sort of quickly get it and they will be like, okay, that's great. I see what this product is, and now I'm ready to hear more about it. And then you just tell them more about it, etc. I've done a bunch of episodes about this, maybe 2 episodes about this, and I will link them in the show notes so you can get more of an idea. But that's where I would start with. Forget edit software, forget SaaS, forget tools, forget any of that stuff. Get as clear as you possibly can and go from there. All right. Next question. Dave Schwartz, favorite way to conduct ad testing? I'm not going to answer that question here. I've done many episodes about that, and maybe some would say beaten into the ground. So you can go check out my creative testing campaign episodes, also linked in the show notes. But I just thought that was funny. That was one of the questions on this because I talk about it a lot. All right. Andrew Rivers asks how to come up with ideas for boring stuff like helping people get out of debt or final expense burial insurance, those kinds of questions. What I would say is those are not boring. It's a good question. How do you come up with creative for boring stuff? But those are not actually boring. Those are important matters. They're not exciting. They're not retail products, but they're really important issues in people's lives, right? Getting out of debt is a big deal. And so my answer to the question of creative around helping somebody get out of debt is, if you have a great product that helps people get out of debt, man, you just have to tell people about it and start again as clear as possible, appealing to the benefit as clearly as possible. I would start an ad about how to get out of debt with the phrase, you can get out of debt. The anxiety you feel about your debt can go away. It is doable, and I have exactly the tools to help you. I would start right there, because for the person who's in debt is hanging over their head. It is psychological torture for them all the time. It is this thing they're carrying around with them every day when they walk through life and adding stress. And if you really can help them get out of that, there's nothing boring about that. You should make the compelling case for why you can do it, how you can do it, make it clear to them why they should act right now, make it happen right now, and how you can help them do it. And then you should deliver on that promise. All right. And so that's what I would do. I would do that. And now for some of these things, how to get out of debt, final expense, burial insurance, these are things where, again, the explainer concept works really well. If your product is not exciting, I think whatever, a fashion brand or a really clever, interesting retail brand or some crazy new product, etc. Right? Maybe that's what you think of as exciting categories. But in this case, don't worry about being clever at all. What your customer needs is information, and they need to understand why it's good for them. And so I would just do everything you can to explain that. It's, again, where the explainer ad will work. In fact, developing that muscle, the explainer muscle, is something that I think could really, really help for categories like that quite a bit. So yeah, that's the way I would think about it. They're not exciting in one sense, but in another sense, they are exciting. And next week, I'm going to actually have Sarah Levinger on the show to talk a little bit more about consumer psychology and some of those things. These are cases where I think the consumer psychology is obvious. And so you should just appeal right into those things. Recognize what it is that people are feeling and wanting, speak right to that, and then deliver on your promise, deliver a great product. My clients use BILY. BILY.ai as their pixel for their Meta ads and their website. That's their pixel installation for 100% server-side tracking. If you are still using the native Meta Shopify pixel integration, you should stop doing that and switch to BILY right now. There's a number of tools like this. BILY is my favorite of them for a number of reasons. First of all, the install is incredibly easy. Like within the click of a couple buttons, no developer required. You will have BILY installed on your site. Secondly, there is absolutely no risk to trying it out for yourself. It's $1 for the first month, and so you can actually create a separate pixel on BILY and straight up create an A/B test with BILY against your other pixel. Just take your best performing ads, split it into 2 campaigns, see which one performs better. You will also see very clearly that BILY increases your event match quality in your Meta Ads account. You just go to your events manager, you can pull up and see the data quality that's being transferred. And what ultimately BILY is going to do is going to report more fully into your Meta Ads dashboard, so you're going to get more accurate reporting, but also it's going to feed more and better quality information back to Meta from your website, which will help Meta's machine learning do its job the best that it possibly can. So go to BILY.ai, and amazingly, BILY actually can be a one-stop shop replacement for basically the entirety of Google Tag Manager. You can use BILY for Google Ads, like again, click of a button and enhanced conversions, everything will be taken care of. GA4, if you're still sleeping on that integration, that's the click of a button. TikTok, Twitter, like it doesn't matter. You can use it for all of them with the click of a few buttons and for a very, very reasonable price. It's another reason I love it. It is the most cost-effective of these solutions on the market. Go to BILY.ai, get started with BILY today. All right, number 3, Zack, owner of brands himself and the founder of Homestead Studios ad agency. Zack with an interesting question that really stuck out to me. I'm hoping to actually get him on here to talk about it a little bit, maybe even by the time this gets edited. We'll see. I'll even intercut him. I don't think that's going to happen here, but we'll try and get him on this. But Zack Stock says, if you had to choose, would you pick low volume of assets plus whitelisting access to creator accounts, or high volume of assets and no whitelisting access? So whitelisting, if you don't know, right, is when you run ads through somebody else's account, right? So his brand is called Hollow Socks. Let's say he worked with me. Let's say I was a big influencer, so he ran, and he wanted to run Hollow Socks ads that for me, with me as the influencer, me as the creator, and so I create content that says, here's why Hollow Socks ads are so great, or Hollow Socks socks are so great. You should buy some right now. And so I make that piece of UGC content or whatever. Whitelisting would be running that ad through my page, not through the Hollow Socks page, right? So the ad would come in from the page Andrew Ferris instead of through Hollow Socks. Okay, so that's the idea. Now, this question really stood out to me because Zach's a smart guy and an experienced advertiser. And so for him to say, which one of these would you want, is so specific that it suggested to me that, like, Zack knows something about this that I don't, and has a really clear opinion here. And so which one would you choose? Would you choose low volume of assets plus whitelisting, or high volume of assets plus no whitelisting? And my answer is probably I would still pick high volume of assets plus no whitelisting access, because I just believe creative quantity really matters. And I'm assuming that somewhere in that high volume of assets, there's some good ads. And while I think whitelisting probably helps, I ultimately think the content and the messaging drives performance really significantly. So that is what I would pick given those two options, trying to entertain the question in the version that Zack asked, right? If I have to choose between those two, that's probably what I choose. That said, I think this is interesting. I have at least one brand with a founder who has some name value in his space, and we run all of our ads. I just checked this because of this question. We ran most of our ads through his page and not through the brand page. And they definitely work a lot better running through his page. It seems it's the same assets running on both places. Really consistently, that's the case. I know I've talked to Dave Recook about this recently. He's seeing some success with this at Bamboo Earth. And I'll just tell you further in the DMs after talking with Zack about this, as well as David Herman, who chimed in here. The two of them also are suggesting seeing whitelisting. In fact, David, I think, replied publicly on this thread saying whitelisting assets for sure. They're seeing this as a big deal. So here's actually my answer to the question in a way that's maybe more helpful. I want both probably, and I would probably test whitelisting access more aggressively because of some of the success that people are saying they're seeing. So this is a simple thing you could do as a takeaway here. If you are working with any creators at all, go and try to work out whitelisting deals. What I'm seeing is $200 to $500 a month for whitelisting access to the run-through ads through their pages. Can be more than that if the creator, the influencer is sort of a bigger deal. But that, that's kind of the range of prices I'm seeing. I'm also seeing a lot of folks creating founder pages for their brand's founders and running ads through there. We're certainly going to try that with a couple of my brands. So I don't have a final answer on this, but this seems like a good idea to put some testing energy to. And if you're already reaching out to creators and already have conversation with them, it's actually really easy to try this. And so this is one of those tests that I think is sort of low cost, potentially high impact, and you should give it a try. So I'm for giving that a shot. All right. How do you source Aaron Orndorf, the great Aaron Orndorf? Actually, let's use a different Aaron question. Does what happens after the creative, after the click, play into your creative strategy? Funnels. That's what he's asking. Does what happens after the click, after the creative, play into your creative strategy? Now, it's not surprising that Aaron asked this question. Aaron is the vice president of marketing at Fermat. So maybe some self-interest here. Fermat makes funnels for brands, landing pages, offers, sort of custom PDPs, and it's a clever product. You can, and I'll just tell you honestly, we have signed with Fermat with one client of mine, and we're testing it for them. This actually plays into my answer a little bit. This client is in the supplement space, and so supplements are a category where customers need a lot of information, and customers will read and watch very long amounts of content. And so I am convinced that for many brands, just sending traffic to the PDP works great for the collection page. And landers don't work that well. And one thing I'll say here is landing pages per se are not magical. Like your collection page or your PDP, those are landing pages if you send traffic to them, right? So there's nothing magical about creating a new page to send somebody to instead of the PDP. What I think is the case, though, is to basically extend what I was saying earlier about clarity. There are times when landing pages and when a sort of post-ad click experience can really serve the customer well by giving more additional information to them about what makes the product great and whether or not it's for them. And for the customer for whom your product really appeals and really could make a difference and create the benefit in their life that you're trying to create for them, giving them that information can really help. So the way I think about this is that for certain brands, I think it can make a really big deal. Basically, anybody selling something that does require more information, supplement type products. And there's another layer of this as well, which is sometimes I also think that products have different uses to different folks. So the example that I'm thinking of here, and again, I will link to this episode, but a couple weeks ago, I had Riley Strickland on the show, who had been the CEO of LoomCube, and was now looking at doing other things. But he said something on that episode of my show that really stuck out to me when I interviewed him, which he said, we tried at LoomCube. LoomCube sells LED lighting of various kinds. He said at LoomCube, they tried all kinds of different CRO stuff over time, moving menu items around and reorganizing stuff and, changing the copy on the main page a little bit here and there, whatever. He said none of those things really moved the needle over a lot of years, and they're an 8-figure business. Like they've grown pretty big. He said none of those had really moved the needle that much on their product or on their performance, on their conversion rate. He said, on the other hand, and Riley would say he's sort of a marketing lead CEO type, right? So he's really in the weeds of their marketing. Some CEOs are more operational, some are more raising money all the time, whatever. Riley was like the marketing type CEO. And so he was in this. He said, for him, the thing that really was the big unlock was connecting the creative and post-click experience to specific use cases for their customers. So the example he gave there that I think is a perfect case of this that really illustrates this point is a tattoo artist. He said LED lighting that they sold at LoomCube, that LED lighting, some of it would be like home office stuff, right? I've got lights right now. You can't see them, but they're lighting my face as I'm talking to you. And there's ring light and all that kind of stuff. And it's built so that, when I'm on calls or when I'm recording podcasts or whatever, I have good lighting if I want to use it for cameras. And he said, on the other hand, so they sold a lot of that stuff, right? Or especially around post 2020 when people moved home, they sold a lot of that stuff. But they started off selling lights attachments to drones and to GoPros. And then later on, as they developed more lighting, they found that they had really good use cases in other places. For example, tattoo artists. They said Riley said tattoo artists were like essentially $1 million line item in their business, where tattoo artists were using their lights in their tattoo studios in specific ways to light people as tattoo artists were working on people's tattoos. And you think about that, a tattoo artist and a home office are using the exact same product, but with really different value propositions and maybe different needs. Like, I don't know, I'm not a tattoo artist, but I'm assuming there's different ways in which the product creates value for them. So he said what happened was generating creative and then funnels, post-click experiences that really messaged tattoo artists and were sort of self-contained in that way, that he said that's where you would see 30 and 40% conversion rate lifts, because you were able to speak more directly to the customer's needs. In that respect, thinking more carefully about your funnel is just an extension of the clarity principle. All you're doing is trying to talk to the specific customer that you have, explain to them as clearly as possible how the product fits uniquely into their life, solves their problem, has a benefit for them, and then messaging that all the way through the funnel. And the other thing I really like about post-click experiences like Landers, and one of the reasons we're testing Vermont for a client, is because at the same time, you can also test offers very easily, often with a self-contained A/B test unit. I know Vermont has that built in. You can A/B test right there on their page, including against non-Vermont pages, which is interesting to me. Or you can run manual bids and just let Meta sort of scale winners as it gets information, though that's a slower process for a number of reasons. So I really like that idea of being able to test offers. You can imagine, again, for supplement brands, right? You could do a percentage discount, you could do gift with purchase, you could do subscription offers, all kinds of different things. And I think offers have a really big impact on performance. And with landing pages, you could take the exact same lander, you duplicate it really easily, and just have the lander offer be two different things on each page, and just see which one performs better in a really self-contained way. So for me, that's all interesting. So yeah, that's how I think about that. Starts with clarity to the customer all the way through the funnel. Think about what their needs are, figure out how to show and tell and do everything you can to explain to them how your product fits into there, all the way through the customer experience on the landing page, and then think about how to test offers as well. I think they're really, really useful. I'm investing more time and money with my own brands and clients into getting better at using them. So there you go. Okay. Another great question here from Jessie Healey, agency operator and owner down in Australia. I think she actually just left her agency, she said, but smart, experienced e-commerce thinker. Jessie says, how do you brief designers? Do you give them a really tight brief and exact assets to work with, or a folder of assets and a rough idea? Great question. I brief designers. So all ads start with copy. This is the first point. The words are the drivers of it, because advertising is an idea business. And so for me, the place that I start with is the ideas. And I'm working through this. Again, there's some categories that maybe that's a little bit different for. Apparel and fashion is the most obvious one. Although actually, I think it's possible to underrate how important it is to do some thinking about how your product meets people and to explain that clearly, even for fashion brands. But that said, for most other categories, advertising starts with ideas, and ideas is about words. You express ideas through words, at least when you want to do that as clearly as possible. So we write briefs, and typically we are writing multiple hooks for any video ad, and then one body, one sort of validation section or another, something like, here's why you can trust us, reviews, PR, that kind of thing, and then an offer section at the end, maybe multiple offer sections if we are testing offers. So that's the way I would think about sort of the structure of a brief. Okay. So from there, though, how do you actually brief a designer or a video editor to get into that? I think that this really depends. So the newer a brand, an editor or designer is, the more detailed I'm going to be. What I typically do is I brief editors and designers. If I know there is a shot that I want to use for a specific section, I will highlight that and say, please use X shot in this section of it, because I know it needs to illustrate that. Or please use a shot that illustrates this particular thing here. Make sure you cut to it. Don't just have a talking head here, whatever. I need to show, don't just tell in this case, right? But I will do that in some cases, and then leave a lot of the rest of it for the designer or editor to figure out and use their instincts for. And then I will also very often ask my designers and editors, especially if they've been with me for longer, been with the brand for longer, to get creative along the way. something I know about the design and edit process is that designers and editors tend to be more creative types, and they will have ideas when they're working on a project, and they will think to themselves, boy, I'd sure like to do it this way. And I believe that people are smart, and I believe that people have good intuitions a lot of times. And so I always want to give them the opportunity to do that. And I will try to tell them to go through and use their instincts where they can. Over time, those instincts will typically get honed more in line with the strategy that I like to generate. And so the relationship gets better, and everybody kind of knows what everybody's looking for and does, and it gets better from there. So for me, that is the way I would think about this, is that I'm going to do sort of key areas where I really want to make sure a certain point gets across. I'm going to highlight that and call it out in a brief to a designer or an editor. And then if beyond that, I'm going to give them a little bit more creative freedom. And then crucially, because I'm running manual bids, we have a rule at AJF Growth, which says the heuristic, right, is variations, not edits. Because there's another thing that happens in design and edit processes, which is you'll go, man, should it be this way or should it be that way? And my answer is, if you think it will really make very little difference and it's pure preference, just pick, okay, right? But otherwise, if you think it actually could make a difference, give me both. Give me 2 edits. That's a small change. Give me 2 edits. It will take you 3 minutes more. Upload both, and we will just launch both ads, okay? And so by the time a lot of our ads launch, we almost never launch an ad, quote unquote. We launch 6 to 12 versions of nearly every ad. So also part of why I don't do a lot of creative like iterations, because our iterations happen sort of before we ever launch the ad. We create a bunch of hooks on an ad, create a bunch of offers on an ad, or some other sections that we just want to play with, shorter, longer, mid-form, whatever. And we'll just say like, okay, let's just, and when you're in the edit process, just give me all them, and we'll launch, like I said, 6 to 12 variations, 5 to 10 variations, whatever. All of them will go, all of them will get built at once. Meta will spend on the winners and it will suppress the losers. And there's really no risk to doing it that way. And because there's so little cost risk, I don't have to test all those assets because of the way we do creative testing. Therefore, I can launch more assets from the start, try more ideas from the start, and I don't have to wait and try things out. Okay. So that's the way that I brief designers. I hope that makes sense. All right, we've got another self-interested question here from a good dude, a guy I've come to enjoy in the space. Reza, I'm going to say Kajavi. I've actually never heard his name spoken out loud, but the founder of Motion, the creative testing software. Do you have a creative reporting process to cycle learnings back in your new ad production? If so, what does it look like? And Reza actually might not like my answer very much, but how do you get insights from your creative back to new ad production? So I think there are some people for whom a tool like Motion or whatever way they do it could make a lot of sense. I always think back to my friend and recent sparring partner, Jess Bachman, who did an episode with me a long time ago about his creative testing strategy. And one of the things I know about Jess is that he and his team have built extraordinary process around cycling insights from their creative back into creative iterations that they are going to make. And they use the information, I think they use Motion, to get insights from their ads and then create new ads based off of data and reporting insights like that. And I think if you have Jess's level of process for this, that could work. But actually, in a recent conversation with Jess, he agreed with me that if you don't have Jess's level of process and maybe Jess's level of talent, which I think is extremely high, I think that that you probably shouldn't mostly think about creative iterations this way. And instead, what I do very simply to analyze creative is I ask 2 questions, okay? Number 1, which ads spent the most money? Because I run manual bids, spend is performance. Overwhelmingly, if an ad is spending a lot of money, it tells me that ad is a high performing ad, and almost always, and I mean like 99% of the time at least, maybe more, the ads that are spending money are producing the value that my manual bidding, like bid caps and TROS campaigns, are telling Meta that I need to get for me to spend on it. Okay. So that's the first question, which ads are spending? So I just go into Meta ads dashboard and I look at the ads that are spending the most money. And when I look at those ads that are spending the most money, I then go from there and to go to step 2. I look at the ads that are spending the most money. I look at a bunch of them and I ask this question: why do I think they spent the most money? What similarities are there? Now, that is not scientific. I'm just suggesting there's a hypothesis here. That said, like, I think it works. I think you can learn a lot by just watching creative, looking at what's spending a lot, and seeing if you can find anything in common. So one client of mine, we just found people just get it with the brand a lot faster than I think. And so actually just kind of getting to the point really quickly works, and lots of image ads work. And so we just pump out iPhone quality image ads. We get tons of images that influencers share when we do influencer seeding. And we just fill the account with those kinds of ads. And it's not the entire thing that's spending. We have all kinds of more creative stuff and other ideas that are spending, text and context ads, like I mentioned earlier. There's a whole bunch of different stuff that's spending. But what I found is people look at the product and they get what the product is. It's a little different than most categories that they've seen before. It's kind of a category creator product, and they say, oh, that's fun, that's interesting, and they click, and maybe they buy. And so for that brand, I don't need any deeper creative reporting than that. I can just look at what's spending and see. Okay. And because I'm not going to go iterate very much on specific ads, I don't need to go look at an ad and go try to figure out, okay, how do I take this one ad and try to make it 50% better by editing the hook or whatever. Also, because I run most ads with multiple hooks in the first place, I basically do the testing at launch, the sort of iterative type testing at launch. I don't actually go reiterate a lot. I just launch all of my ideas from the start and choose the winner. Okay. And so for another client of mine, I did this analysis recently, and we found that of my top 11 spending ads in the account, in the campaign, 77% of the spend of those top 11 ads. So I think the top 11 ads represented about 80% of the total ad spend for this year. Okay. None of them was like a super mega smash winner. Like, of those 11 ads, there was a pretty decent distribution of spend between all of them. And we looked at those ads, and we discovered that 77% of the dollars that were spent on those top 11 ads were spent on ads that started directly comparing this client's product to other products or solutions, whether it was actually another product or not, in the same category, trying to solve the same problems for the customer. And because of that, we just very quickly we just determined, wait a minute, we need to make more ads that are all about that start with a comparison and that tell people this is why this is a better option than what's there. It's a really established category, and so everything is about this issue of what makes this product a better option than the other ones there. So again, I didn't really need to look deep into any metrics there. I just analyzed the top spending ads, watched the ads, developed a hypothesis, and went from there. And that is what I think most people ought to do. You know your brand and your products. Develop a hypothesis about why your top ads are spending, and then iterate and think about okay, how do I do that in more creative ways? So for this example, for this brand, right, we also found the founder, him doing videos about the product worked really well. People saw him as an authority figure. He represented the product really well. That worked great. Secondly, we're going to go to some creators and we're going to work with them. We've had sort of mixed success working with creators, nothing crazy great. And we're going to go to them and say, okay, we want some new ads from you, creators, but here's the only thing we're going to give you. Pick a product of ours that you like the most. And most of these creators are actually already using the product, so they're familiar with it, which I always think is a good thing. And we're going to say, you could do this however you want, short form, mid form, long form, I don't really care. But the starting place for the ad is, why is this product better than the other ones in the marketplace? And that's it. So they get to choose stills, videos, short, long, like I said, doesn't matter. But we're going to have them do that. Now, I don't know if that's going to work yet. If we go and do that and we launch our next 40 ads and they don't move the needle by doing things that way, then look, we'll go back to the well and we'll try to figure it out again. But I think that's the best way to analyze creative. It's very unscientific, but I don't think most people have truly scientific process for this anyway, and you shouldn't try to have scientific process for it. So as far as I'm concerned, if there's a tool that helps surface those insights for you in a way that's better, great. I don't really care. Meta Ads Dashboard works great for me. And if you can get those insights faster and better by using a tool, then fine. But for my 2 cents, what I'm doing is just analyzing spend and then trying to make some hypotheses about why the best ads are spending the most. And that's it. You know about my friends at More Staffing. I just made another hire in my organization using my friends at More Staffing to hire incredible e-commerce talent in the Philippines. You should do it too. You should not just be thinking about hiring in the Philippines as a way to get virtual assistant level talent for your business, $5 an hour kind of thing, you should be thinking about hiring high quality, experienced people with deep e-commerce resumes across your organization to do incredible work. Your dollar goes farther for hiring in the Philippines because a much lower salary than you would pay in the US is a much higher salary than market rate in the Philippines. So you're going to attract incredible talent while at the same time helping take care of your bottom line in your growing e-commerce business. Everybody wins when that happens, and More Staffing can help you do all of that by helping you find, recruit, coach, and retain incredible talent for your e-commerce business by going to morestaffing.co/AF, morestaffing.co/AF to get started with that today. And if you have an employee who does not work out at More Staffing brings to you from the Philippines, I have great news for you. They will actually get you a new employee to replace that one at no extra charge. So they have a 1-year guarantee on any employee that they find for you in your business, which means it takes all the risk out of it for you. I've only heard of one person I've sent to More Staffing who was maybe thinking about doing that, taking them up on that offer. Everybody else that I have talked to, I've actually said this on a few episodes recently, and nobody's reached out to me to tell me stories otherwise, has had great success hiring talent in their organizations from More Staffing. I certainly have in my business. You will too. Go to morestaffing.co/AF to find incredible talent for your e-commerce business from the Philippines today. Okay, let's go to, who should we go to next? All right, this is a media buying question, but we'll go to it quickly. When do you turn off, if ever, ads that are spending but not performing? I know you're an advocate for spend as a solid metric. This comes right on the back of that question from Reza. So yeah, what about if an ad is spending but not performing? When do you turn it off, if ever? That's from Cody Nordquist, by the way, also another agency owner, smart guy. Cody's question is a good one. I basically never turn off an ad if an ad is spending. If an ad is spending and it's really underperforming, what I might do is isolate it into its own ad set with a separate bid cap and maybe lower the bid cap even more or increase the target ROAS a little bit more, something like that, just to make sure that nothing gets crazy. But I basically never turn off an ad otherwise because I run manual bids. And if Meta thinks that my ad is going to work, then normally it has better, less biased information than I do. It's got a really sophisticated probabilistic forecasting engine driving all of it. So there isn't much of a need to do it. That gets you also into the reason why I think that you can just analyze high spenders and use that as the basis of most of your analysis. High spend tells you a lot about an ad. So I really don't ever turn ads off. And I especially don't turn ads off if they've spent like $1,000 and they're not performing that great. Like that's just the pathway to making a lot of big mistakes because that just doesn't tell you that much in most cases. Let's go to how do you source, Jim Fanara? Again, sorry if I got your name wrong, Jim. How do you source and develop creatives with companies as a freelancer? How do you source and develop companies? I think what Jim is asking is like, you are not, if you're a freelance media buyer or something like that, how do you generate creative for a company and actually get them to help? And this is one of those places where I think if you're a freelance media buyer, you have to just inject yourself into the conversation about creative. Media buying only gets you so far, and you have to be one of the voices to say that to people. And if you have creative perspective, your job just becomes to tell the client, look, we've got to do a better job with more creative. There is no media buying solution to your low ad spend or to your poor performance or whatever it is, or just to your plateau that you've hit, things are performing well. We've got to generate more creative. And this is where I would say something like I just talked about is the way probably into that conversation, which is source information about creative that has worked so far and use that. Don't just say, my opinion is we need more creative. Like, make a good argument in favor of why you need more creative and why you need certain kinds of creative. And if you can do that, then you can probably get really far helping somebody develop those things. So if you present something to somebody that says your top 11 ads are 80% of your spend, and of that spend, 77% of it is all built around comparison as the sort of hook or the angle, that would be a compelling piece of information for a client to then go and get you more comparison style ads. So surface the information, service the data in a way that is thoughtful and clear, and then make your request from there. And that will just make you more and more valuable to the client, who now doesn't just have a media buyer, they actually have a creative strategist, 2-for-1 deal. Then you raise your rate, and they spend more money, and everybody gets rich and wins, and it's great. I'm kidding. But yeah, there you go. Oh man, Pujun Bhatnagar. I'm so sorry. Pujun Bhatnagar. I really try to be good with names that are in clearly from cultures that is not my original California white guy culture, but it is sometimes hard. So Pujun asks, I want to ask a question that the community still debates: static or video? I love this question. What works best and why? The answer is neither works best. Your static or video is a question that gets kicked around a lot, and I love this question because I hate this question. The answer is clear works best, and there's a lot of different ways to communicate information in a clear and compelling way. I'll go back to my friend Jess Bachman on this. I have seen Fireteam develop very clever, clear, information-rich, compelling static images that do so much creative communication in one image, and it's just an image, and it is really brilliant. He's got, I saw him do one thing for a brand where it was like ranking the softest clothing brands available. He had all these brand names and had their logos, and the number one brand was the one that he was working on. Right? It was just a really clever ad where it just communicates a lot about this product. Right? It communicated that this product sells the softest clothes on the market, and it did that by comparing them to other brands in the space, and just one image. It's all you need. You didn't need to do a whole long video about it. Just one image. Both can work really well. Think specifically about how the medium communicates well. With video, you've got a lot more time. Feel free to use it. There's no such thing as an ad that's too long. There might be an ad that's too boring, but there's no such thing as an ad that is too long. And so you can use both really effectively. Different categories may lend differently to others. If you have, a category, if you have a product where, like I said earlier, like an image can make it really clear really fast, and you just, you don't actually need a lot of information. It's just be clear. Then yeah, absolutely. That can work really, really well. So yeah, static or video, my answer is both. Try to do both all the time. Get good people who can think about ways to communicate in both mediums. By communicating in different media, in different formats, you actually can extend your creative diversity and reach more people. So I actually think what you really want is both. Jeff Serini asks, your experience or opinion on performance creative agencies like Tube Science. Also interested in your opinion on the value of higher production creative and its role in a content portfolio. At what point does it make sense to invest and try? I have no opinion on Tube Science. I've never seen, I'm sure I've seen their work, but I've never worked with them in any possible way. But this is a good question, because what he's really asking is, what about paying more for higher quality production or agencies that claim to do performance creative, etc. I think there are two stages here. I think in an earlier stage of business, most brands should not be using that kind of agency because it's just too expensive. It's just really hard to make the cost work very well, especially if you're also using a regular agency or whatever, or if you're in-housing. Like it's just really, really hard to make the cost net out. I don't know Tube Science's pricing. It's just really hard to make the cost work out. I don't know Tube Science's pricing. I don't know most of the pricing. But the truth is that at some point, what you're paying for is actually, you have to get out of the mentality of cost per widget and into the mentality of paying for brain power. And so most creative agencies on a cost per video level, unless their whole value proposition is that they are relatively cheap, right? And they spin out a lot of ads fast. There are certainly agencies that do a great job of that because they've figured out a way to create incredibly streamlined production processes. Production is a hard game in a lot of different ways, including pricing it. And so, but I can imagine people have solved that problem, can generate a lot of ads at a very good price. So yeah, I think it's possible that you could find creative agencies that do that for cheaper. But what I really think is that you should think about your ad account in 3 stages. Stage number 1 is solving the creative problem for your ads. And I think this is where, for you as an operator, especially if you're sub 5 million in revenue, you should be in this conversation yourself with your agency, whatever. So, early, especially sub 2, sub 3 million in revenue, I think you should be running your ads yourself. Get some help from Admission, from CTC. I send people there all the time for media buying best practices and auditing of your account and all those things, but then run the ads yourself and get into, if you need to, contract people who are smart, get some coaching, get help, whatever. But really try your best to kind of create the unlock on clear, compelling creative yourself early on. If you can do that, then at the same time as you do that, you then have step 2. Okay, so once you've sort of solved the creative problem for your business, where you've generated $100, maybe even $200,000 a month in spend, right? If you can get to those kinds of levels, then now the question is like, how do you actually scale up the process of generating more creative diversity, sort of pouring fuel on the fire? That is the stage where I think it starts to make more sense to think about creative agencies to come and help you. I don't think you want a creative agency to solve your creative problem for you. I think you want to use them to extend your creative resources for a problem that you've already seen solved and see if they can do it in clever and clear ways. It's a real skill. I'll go back to my friend Jess from Fire Team. One thing I always say about Jess is that he's just a lot more actually creative than I am. And so the kind of creative he develops is really different. He understands the value of clarity in performance marketing, but he gets to the clarity with much more creative methods. And you can actually do both. And so if you work with Fire Team, that's what you're going to get, right? Is like that kind of output. And so I would say the same thing is true for Tube Science, for anybody else. Like, see who it is that can extend your creative resources, use their knowledge and use their creativity to extend your resources. Quick interruption, but it's not an ad. At least not for another product or another brand. It's an ad, if anything, for my newsletter. I am working on ramping up my newsletter. You should go to ajfgrowth.com right now and sign up for my newsletter on that page. You can do it in the footer. You can do it on the pop-up. There's a couple places to do it. But I've got really good stuff coming. So if you like this show, if you like this kind of content, I'm working on scaling up more of it to send out a newsletter. I don't know if it'll be weekly or not, but it's definitely something that's a big part of what I'm working on right now to expand my output of things that are going to help you grow your business. That's what it's going to be all about, is how to grow your business profitably. Go sign up, ajfgrowth.com. There was another question in there about higher quality level production versus lower quality level production and what's the place for both. I don't have much perspective on this. I think you can build brand very well without extremely beautiful ads. At least on Meta. I think once you get to other channels, you probably need to play according to the rules of the channel a little bit more. Your YouTube ads, so far as I can tell, I'm not really sure anybody's actually winning on YouTube right now, though I hear whispers here and there. There's some stories I've heard of like, oh, this brand's killed it on YouTube, and then like the brand actually is getting slaughtered. So you just never know with what you hear, but I think probably that's a channel where like you'd need to speak the more native language of the platform, which very often is going to be better looking creative. Not always, but if you're going to do TV ads, you probably can't run UGC, right? So there's place in those kinds of things. For Meta, I think it could work, but I just don't really see brands up their production quality on their videos and have that be a path to really growing things much. Maybe there's a way in which it makes your brand be taken more seriously or something like that. I don't have a very strong perspective on that issue and probably shouldn't be seen as the arbiter of it. I'll just say I just don't think most brands need to really work on for a long time increasing their creative production quality. This is a related question. This is part of the last one, so I'll just touch on it a little bit more. John Chen, what's your process from getting a brand spending $1K a day to $5K a day at the same CPA? In terms of creative, how much creative would you test, and what would those creatives be? Now, of course, I can't say exactly how much creative I would test or what those creatives would be, but I do think what John is getting at here is correct, which is you need more. And so this is where I would go back to what I just said a second ago, which is a lot of times, if you have gotten $1K a day in spend, that means you're probably somewhere. Okay. And so it's really hard to spend $30,000 a month or almost $500,000 in a year, depending on, how this all works out, without having some kind of basic, something like product market fit or product ad fit. Maybe we'd call it ad market fit. Excuse me. Would be better. Ad market fit. Anyway. But to go up from there, you're probably going to need to think about generating better quality creative. And you're still sort of in the got to solve the creative problem stage of Facebook ads growth. You need to think about what is the value proposition? Why is this good? And how do I communicate that as clearly as possible to people in a way that's really compelling and interesting to them? And how do you do that? With more creative and with better creative? I mean, there's not like, you just have to keep trying that. Like I said, analyze what's working so far, try and do more of it. If analyze what's working so far, try and do things that are really different from that. If you want, try to create diversity in your creative, those kinds of things. So I'd begin to try some things there. But the underrated factor here is the possibility actually of just your product and your brand developing a little bit more. It's possible that the pathway from 1K to 5K is actually new products, and more compelling products, or more margin, or something like that. And so never underestimate that possibility as a way that you can go from there. So yeah, mostly though, I would be thinking about like, okay, I mean, I have a brand right now that's sort of plateaued over the last few months. We just can't get through a certain barrier that we're getting through. And so we all looked around closely and we analyzed what's gotten us to here. What did we learn from that? What will get us to the next stage? Do we need to do more of what we were doing or less of what we're doing? Do we need more creative diversity, et cetera? And ultimately what we landed on is we need to do more of what we're doing. We actually weren't focused enough on what we're doing. And so let's try that next and play with more offers. Offers can be a huge unlock for brands as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to play with more offers and try and do a better job of more consistently outputting creative across a wide range of products in their product portfolio that is similar to the best performing stuff they've done in the past, at least in terms of the opening angle entrance into starting the conversation with the customer. So that's the idea. Another great question here from Winston Lovas. When you're running cost controls, is there such a thing as too many creative variations for you? For example, if you have a still image, do you just have your designer make 200 variations of it with slightly different background color variations? This is a great question because it gets to a confusing part of the conversation here. 200 slightly different background color variations. Obviously, Winston's question is stated in sort of hyperbole, probably, but I think it's a really good question because what do we mean by variations, not edits, for example? What is the limit to that? Now, I think there's a world where AI ad creation allows you to basically do exactly what Winston said, which is like create extremely high amounts of variations on very small things in an ad, and then just run all of them and see if they work. So yeah, definitely. I think there's a world where that happens, but right now the creative production timeline would be too much. So here's the way I would answer that. What I would say is there's technically no such thing as too many variations with cost controls. Like more ads is good. What I would say is don't waste your time testing very small things. So like when I'm testing hooks, I am trying to think of meaningfully different hooks for my creative, whether that's visual hooks or words being different. I'm trying to think about like really creating a wide range of potential hooks to try something different. Same with offers or whatever it is. But then like once that is done, I'm not really testing small parts of changes to the body of the ad. I just am not doing that. Instead, I'm thinking about how to test bigger things that are more likely serious needle movers. So yeah, that's the way I would think about that question. It is possible. If you think too iteratively, it's a problem. And this is sometimes a mistake people make when they evaluate the idea of like creative testing iterations. I think smart people, when they're talking about creative iterations, are not talking about background color changes. Everybody has heard the story a million times of like, oh, we changed the CTA button color and it increased our conversion rate by 20%. That is a nonsense story. I bet somewhere it actually happened and it's real and whatever. There's some version of that story that's actually true. But most cases, I'm certain the test was not conducted very scientifically. Also, they changed the product when they changed the button color. There's a million variations, whatever, right? Like, it's just not the thing that I think is really going to move the needle for you. And I wouldn't bother testing really small things. So I would test bigger things and I would focus especially on messaging. So for image tests for us, we don't do a lot of like color and small design changes. What we test is headline changes in our images, right? So take the same image, move the copy around, not really the design so much, but like, take headline A, headline B, headline C, and then maybe body A, body B, body C, and start to combine them up in different ways, etc. In that case, it's really about messaging, right? And so now you actually do want to do, and I think if you're doing that kind of thing, you can test 40 ads at once and it'll work. And your winners will, if you have any in there, will be amplified and your losers will be suppressed, and it's not like too much for the algorithm or anything. But yeah, focus on what's most important. Okay, Leo Serpa, and I think this will be my last question. Do you write the advertorials for your clients? Would you share their ballpark conversion rate, etc.? I will not share their ballpark conversion rate. I don't know what it is. Again, I analyze all of my ad performance on spend. I don't even really look at conversion rate, so I don't worry about that. Do I write the advertorials? Sometimes. If it helps, we will write the advertorial. if that's what we're using for a landing page. We don't always use advertorial landing pages, but I definitely get involved. I think about edits. I think about ways to change them, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I want to be talking to the whole funnel, right? So if I'm the advertiser, the advertorial is part of the ad. And if I'm making an advertorial specific for a certain angle or for certain landers, like the tattoo artist thing I said before, it's important to me to get that right. So it depends on who else is on my team, who else is on the client's team, who's working on it, and what the resources are available for solving it. But yeah, I definitely at least want to be speaking into it, because I think the message really matters and getting the communication right matters, and words are hard. And so I want to be in on the process. So, all right. I think that gets us really, really far for this episode. I hope I've hit enough things creative wise. I would love more of your questions. You can email me at podcast@ajfgrowth.com. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Andrew J. Ferris with follow-ups from this episode, follow-up questions, anything that I said, if I wasn't clear enough. I hope that is helpful to you, though, as well. And so thanks so much for listening and for watching. These are some of my favorite episodes to do. So please hit me with more questions. Let's do more of them in the future. Thanks very much. All right, like I said, that's it for this episode. I told you already where to reach out to me. You can also find everything I'm doing at ajfgrowth.com. And don't forget to follow up with my sponsors, my good friends at More Staffing and with BILY. They're both awesome. Go check them out. And if this episode is helpful to you, the number one way you can say thanks is to share it with somebody who you think it will also be helpful for. I have a bunch of great episodes coming up that I'm super excited about. I've got interviews, like I said earlier, with Sarah Levenger is going to come on the show. I'm working on getting Alex P. from talking about fashion brand growth, those kinds of things. Got all kinds of good stuff coming. So definitely subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. You will like what you see. Thanks so much. I will talk to you next time.